guys, I'm here with a 6x8 layout today with the Kitaholic's February kit for 2021, and this is an example of the supplies inspiring the layout rather than the photo doing that, which is normally what happens. But I saw these papers, which are by Vicky Bruton, or at least the tile one is. I have to double check where the other ones are from, but they are really beautiful, but they've got this kind of really distinctive feel to them. And they made me think of like Middle Eastern, Persian style kind of ceramics and art. And that made me think of our trip to Disney, where we went on a really awesome carousel that was designed like to be like Aladdin. So it had a lot of those kind of motifs in the decoration and the design. So I went back in my photos a couple of years and found that picture of Artie on the carousel, and I decided to scrap that particular picture. I love carousels, they're my absolute favourite, and we got to ride many of them when we were in Japan, and it made me very happy. So I'm creating a mixed media background to start with, and so I've got a piece of white cardstock from my stash, and then I've grabbed out some inklings from Shimmers. I've got 3 different colours there. And I end up really only using one of those colours. It's one called Blue My Mind. I got some pink out because I thought that it would mix with the blue to create a bit of a purpley colour, but it was actually a little bit too bright. I'm still getting a feel for these paints and the individual colours, so I was a little bit unsure about how that would work. So I gave it a go, but the second I put it on there, I was like, oh no, that's not right. So luckily I was able to just dab it up with some kitchen towel, and that worked fine. And I'm just going in with more of that Blew My Mind. I'm saving the yellowy gold one, which is called Minor 49er, and I'm going to save that for some like splatters at the end, so you'll see that a little bit later. I love this blue one because it's got some kind of gold shimmer in it as well, so it's really pretty. So I'm adding plenty of water and sort of smushing it around and making it look nice and watercolory. I also got my liquid watercolors out. These are so intensely pigmented that it's quite hard to control how much color you get on the page. You really just have to kind of play with it. What I thought I would do is put some of that pigment onto my mat and then add some water to it to just water it down. When I did that with the pale blue, it was really light, but then when I did it with that teal color, you'll see in a second, it was very, very, very dark. I just put way too much on. Luckily, I was, again, able to use some water because watercolour is water-based and very reactive with water, you do get a little bit of grace in terms of how you can move it around on the page and mix it up as you go. So that's lucky because when I put that down, I was like, oh no, this is too much. So a little bit of that kind of teal colour has mixed in with the shimmers, and it's sort of changed the tone a little bit, but not very much. So the main thing that's happening here is this sort of shimmers Blew My Mind. Is that what I said it was called? Yeah, Blew My Mind. So yeah, I'm still working on the background. I haven't actually got to the part where I'm using the kit yet, but you will get there. Mixed media backgrounds do take a little while, but I think they can really help the other elements on the page really stand out and make the piece look really layered and lovely. So I'm adding some speckles of gold here, and when I do that while the other paint is still wet, it kind of bleeds in and it looks nice and soft. And then I'll come back later. Oh, it's dry now, you can see. There was some drying time that happened. I'll come back later and add some more speckles now that it's dry, and that will behave differently on the page because it's not wet anymore. So yeah, I'm doing that with the blue, and I'll do it with the gold as well at a couple of different stages. It also helps to dab up some of the thicker, bigger droplets because that helps it dry more quickly, and it just sort of softens the colour a little bit as well. I have some colour shine in a lovely tealy colour. I think it actually is called teal. And I'm going to splatter a little bit of that down as well, just for a little bit more variation in amongst the blues. And yeah, because those are the colours that are strongest in the papers as well. So just splattering and splattering. A lot of this is going to end up getting covered. I want to add enough that when I do put all of my papery elements on top, there's plenty of like painty, splattery bits showing through. So that's why I'm sort of taking my time in this part so that I can sort of freely add things on top once I get up to that. that bit on the sort of center of the page where it's pulled a little bit, that happened just because the paper warped. That happens when you add anything wet to paper. But that's where my photo is going, so you're not going to actually see that. Oh, sorry about the squeak. That was my chair. I have a very squeaky office chair. I have to sit very still while I'm recording voiceovers, otherwise you can hear it. Yeah, anyway, so I have these little frames that came in the kit as well. These are from Sweet Story, I think, and I want to frame this photo. So I've printed it at the appropriate size so that it fills in the empty spot on the frame. And I, at this stage, was unsure whether I wanted to use gold or one of the blue ones, because again, that sort of is the color scheme that I'm going for on this spread. So I'm just testing a couple of them out and deciding which one I think will work best for this one. I do want the photo to really stand out, so I have to make sure I'm picking something that that works. So I'm testing it on the paper that I'm planning on using and just going through my little thought process here. So this paper is just so pretty, and I wanted to make it a bit of a feature. So I'm going to cover half of the page, which is why there's no paint on the left-hand side of the page. I'm going to cover half of the page with it, and I'm going to create a torn edge there because I love a torn edge. I think it adds lovely texture to a spread and just looks cute. So that's going on there, and then I'm going to layer that up with a little bit of tissue paper just from my stash. I have stacks of tissue paper that I just collect from when I buy things and it comes wrapped in stuff. So I've got it in all manner of colours, and I do have some blues there. So you can see with this tile paper, what I've decided to do is actually cut out a bunch of the tiles. I'm doing that selectively, and I'm cutting the ones that have blue, greeny, teal kind of elements on them. And I'm going to use those to create a bit of a pattern as I go. So they are there ready for me to use. I'm a bit of a doofus, and I was a little bit unsure how to work these frames. I wasn't sure if they were meant to be adhesive or if the photo was meant to kind of slip into the frame or what. There are definitely some layers going on there, and I don't really know if I used it properly. So I wouldn't take my use of this as a guide to how they're meant to be used, but this is what I did. I peeled the front of it off, then I attached my photo to some white cardstock, stuck this to the top, and then stuck that over the photo and the cardstock, and then cut it out. The reason that I did that is I wanted to just make the photo a little bit more sturdy and not just be the frame in the photo, like give it something to rest on, because I want to create layers and things with it, and I wanted to be able to do that without feeling like it was going to like come apart or go wonky or whatever else. I just wanted to stabilize it a little bit. So that's what I'm doing here. I am using some double-sided tape and some glue just to adhere it over the photo, which I'm doing like low-key off screen, not on purpose. It's just because I was concentrating very hard on getting it straight, so I'm only half in the frame there. But yeah, I'll go and just cut around that, and then it will just be nice and sturdy and rigid so that I can do other layering with it. So that's what's happening there. Trimming it out. Sarah Jane gave me those scissors for Christmas, and they're the absolute best. They're from Tonic Studios, and they're by Tim Holtz, and I'm so into them. I love them. So here I go adding some tissue paper. I've got this lovely kind of navy blue, which I think adds a lovely kind of contrast of colour and a bit more depth to the overall spread. I'm being a little bit random about how I attach it, which is, it gets a little bit messy, which is annoying because, I mean, look at that. That's a bit silly. But I did use matte medium to do that, so you won't be able to see that glue. It will dry in a way that means you can't see it. So that's good because otherwise that would be very gluey and messy indeed. And then I have this kind of crepe paper, which is a little bit iridescent. It's really pretty. It's this pale blue. I wish I could remember where I got it from. It's just been shoved in my drawer with all the other tissue paper, but it's got that lovely shininess to it, which I think goes really well with the shimmers paints. So I'm just putting a little layer of that in there as well. And it sort of adds an extra softness and lightens up the sort of darker navy. So they layer together really nicely. So again, just sticking that on first with glue and then just adding a little bit of washi to make sure everything stays put. It's all very ad hoc with the adhesives here. I'm just making it up as I go along. Trimming the edges there. And I'm really happy with that layering. I think that makes the torn paper graduate into the painted section really nicely. And then I'm just sort of deciding where I want that frame to go. I think it's so pretty. I love the way that it really draws attention to the photo, because this background is actually going to be quite busy. What I want to do is grab the tiles that I've cut out and sort of create a bit of an unfinished tiled pattern on the background. So I don't want to cover the whole thing. I just want to make it look like someone has been putting some tiles on the page. So that's kind of what I'm aiming for. And as I go, I'm layering up my photo because I want to make sure that it stands out nicely against the background, and also, I guess, fits in with it. So it's that line between making sure it's different enough to stand out, but complementary enough to fit in at the same time. And that's a case of balance, which is why I sort of swap between one and the other a little bit. I'm grabbing a couple of these things out of my stash. These are not part of the kit, but I remembered that I'd opened this recently for another layout, and it had a bunch of tickets in it. And I thought, because we're on a amusement park ride, that would be a cute thing to layer. So I sort of thought I would do that. I've got some tickets and a little bit of blue and green kind of extra colours to add in there. So that was my reasoning there. And I want to do that without taking away from that beautiful pattern and the tiles, because that's what I want to be the feature of this, because the point of this is to really showcase the kit. So that's what I'm doing here. So yeah, just adding a couple of layers and putting that little ticket on the front because, like I said, we're at an amusement park and he's on a ride, so it seemed really appropriate. So just tearing up some little extra layers in there, trying to get a bit more of that navy colour in, because I don't want it to just be in one spot. But you only need a tiny little scrap of things like that to include them, for them to feel like they're doing their job. So adding a little bit of glue in there amongst my layers, because I'm liking how they look, which is always nice. Once you like something enough to start gluing things down, it's always a good feeling. So a little bit of that little scrap going in there. There we go. And just going to keep adding some layers. Oh, here's some more tissue paper. So this one's kind of, will bring out the more aqua and teal colours rather than the blues. And there's a fair bit of that happening. So I wanted to try and do that if I could. And tissue paper is a great way of doing that, because it can be quite subtle. And it helps to include things without letting the overall effect feel too busy. So that often works really nicely. So I'm liking how that cluster's coming together. I do just want to add a little bit more of that navy colour in there, just for balance. And like it honestly is just the tiniest little scrap, but because it's such a dark colour, that's all it needs. So yeah, that's going to go sort of on the middle of the spread. So now what I want to do is actually pop up some of these tiles. So I want to create some dimension. I'm not going to add dimension to all of them, but I want some of them to be lifted off the page. So I'm using some just cardboard from an old box of something that I bought online, it was from a camera, I think. Anyway, it's just corrugated cardboard packaging, and I'm just recycling it by chopping it up into little squares, which I'm going to then adhere to the back of some of these tiles, and then some of them will be lifted up off the page. I'm also going to lift my photo off the page so that it sits at the same level as the raised tiles, and I think that should create a really nice dimensional feel for the spread. So yeah, this was such a good day. This was at Tokyo Disney Sea. We ended up staying at Disney for 2 nights, and so we had 3 days in the parks, and they were 3 of the best days ever. It was so good, and getting to go on multiple carousels made it pretty excellent for me, because that is, like I said, my favourite. I realised I didn't have enough of these tiles, so I just cut a couple of extra ones because I wanted to make sure I had some that were not popped up to create some variation there. So I'm spreading them around, and I want them to fill the page without covering the page. Hopefully that makes sense. I just want it to feel like nice and filled out without being completely covered because I really do like the mixed media on the background, and I also want to make a feature of that torn paper piece. So I don't want to totally cover that up because it's so pretty. So yeah, just adding those things in there, deciding what needs to go underneath. And yeah, so this is a bit of a process of adding, rearranging, taking it off, that kind of thing. But that for me is part of the fun. It's like putting a little puzzle together. So I've tried to sort of speed it up a little bit for you guys so that it's not, interminable. But hopefully I'm giving you an idea of my process while not letting it get too insanely long and fiddly. If you're just sitting there going, Essie, just stick it down, I'm sorry. Hopefully you're not. So adding the glue on, making sure the photo's in the right spot, making sure there's enough behind the photo for it to pop up. I'll add in a bit more of that cardboard in a minute to the parts that I know you definitely won't see, but I'm just making sure that the parts you do see have got the tiles there. I'm also trying to mix up the patterns on the tiles a little bit so that there aren't any that are the same right next to each other. And I definitely want some going over the edges so that obviously I'll trim them off, but just so that they can look like the pattern is continuing off the layout. Adding a little bit more of that minor 49er gold shimmers in there as well, now that we're at the last layers. So here I come with that cardboard. I just want to make sure that that can't be seen from out from the side of the photo. Sticking that on there. So that pops up really nicely. And because there's that dimension in the frame itself as well, that adds like another level of height as well, which I think is really nice. So I really like that. It really helps draw your eye into the photo, which is what I wanted, especially when there is so much really lovely detail in the background. The photo really kind of needs that help to attract your attention. I stuck this down, and I wish I had just put it on a slightly more tilted angle. But this Scotch tacky craft glue that I'm using actually dries really fast. So when I put it down, I didn't have much wiggle room in the end, and I left it a little bit long to realise that I hadn't tilted it the way that I wanted to. So I'm a tiny bit frustrated about that, but it is totally fine. It's just, if I could do it again, I would do it slightly differently. So now I have these sequins, which we all got in the last kit in January. So they've got this beautiful purples and blues and teals and silvery colours. So they're just perfect for this spread. So I'm very happy to be able to use those. I'm using my tweezers to help me put them exactly where I want them. And I'm using my matte medium in my fine line bottle to just put a little bit of adhesive down and then add the sparkles. I couldn't help myself. I added quite a few because I was just having too much fun. And I sort of feel like this layout is a bit extra anyway. There's a lot happening. So if it's already extra, you might as well, add the sequins. Why not? So yeah, there's purple, which goes with Genie there, and the blues and a little bit of white, which I think helps lighten things a little tiny bit here and there. I think they look cute when they're overhanging the edge of some of the tiles as well. So I've done that in a couple of places. And I'm trying to vary up the sizes of them too, which is fun. And I think that's all I'm adding sequin-wise. And now I just want to add a little title. I am finding with 6x8 layouts, I often have a bit of trouble finding space for my title because it's always like an afterthought. The title it just always comes secondary to everything else, which is fine. But I had to have a little think about what I wanted to do with this because I think I wanted to call it like 3 Wishes or Magic Carpet Ride or something, that referenced the Aladdin ride that we were on. But there just wasn't room for all of that unless I was going to use mini alphas. And I really wanted to use these sparkly ones from the kit because the colour is perfect and they're sparkly like Disney and it just was just right. So I ended up just putting magic and actually making it part of the journaling. So I've just written, we're at Tokyo Disney for a magic carpet ride. And then the magic is obviously part of the title. So that was my way around that. As I was journaling, I knocked one of the sequins off. So I'm just reattaching that there now. And I think we are pretty much done. Oh no, of course, got to add more sequins because they're there. So yeah, just adding 1 or 2 more. And now I think I'm pretty much done. Yeah, this was a really fun one. Actually quite involved. I spent ages working on it and I really enjoyed the process. I hope you like the way that it turned out. Make sure you check out Kitaholic Kits where you will get all of these beautiful papers and things. And yeah, they're just really great. And make sure you like and subscribe if you're so inclined. And check me out on Patreon if you'd like to see some extra videos and other goodies over there. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. See you soon. Bye.